At the end of this season, Alpine is going to have 2 seats available for 2025, and even though Gasly is reported to have an option on the team side in his contract, in reality, none of the drivers are guaranteed a seat for next season. And now, on paper, the lineup of Gasly and Ocon actually makes a lot of sense for where Alpine are right now. They're both race winners, they're both proven to be reliable and consistent point scorers across multiple different teams, and the fact is, when you look at the quality of drivers that we have in the top 5 teams, apart from Perez and Stroll, Alpine just isn't in a position to get anyone better. However, Formula 1 is not raced on paper, and after Monaco, it's now more obvious than ever that not only can the lineup of Ocon and Gasly not continue beyond 2024, but Esteban Ocon is almost certainly going to be the one that's going to have to leave the team at the end of the season. When it comes to the incident at Monaco, there's actually 2 different angles that I want to talk about. In terms of the incident itself in isolation, having now analysed it in detail and comparing it to previous incidents, I'm going to say something that's probably a little bit unpopular at the moment, which is that I think Ocon actually got unlucky to receive a 5th-place grid penalty. Initially, I had the same reaction as pretty much everyone else, in that I thought it was way too aggressive and that it was entirely Ocon's fault. Having now seen it multiple times, Ocon actually got in front of Gasly with no contact, so in terms of the initial overtake, yes, you can call it aggressive, but it definitely wasn't over the limit. Once you get to the exit of Portier and just before they make contact, from Gasly's point of view, when the driver in front of you and overtaking you has the inside line and is half a car length in front of you, I am sorry, but you have lost that corner. At this exact screenshot, Gasly is almost half a car length back and on the outside, and we have seen countless overtakes where once someone has got ahead and has the inside line with someone on their outside trying to hang on to it, the next move is always to let the car wash out wide and to squeeze out the car on the outside. However, as is the case in almost all wheel-to-wheel battles, you need to have a bit of respect and a bit of give and go from the other driver as well. For this move to be clean, you need the other driver to realise when they are beat and to back out in time. Because if they choose to hang on round the outside like Gasly did, then contact is almost always inevitable. Stewards are more lenient on lap 1 because they understand that with everyone being so close, this is where incidents are most likely to occur. When you compare Ocon getting a penalty for that incident on lap 1 to Magnussen getting away with what he did on lap 1 against Perez, at least Ocon initially got the move done and had his car ahead, whilst Magnussen decided to stick his nose in a gap that was always going to close. And now, just to be clear, I am not saying that this was Gasly's fault, but analysing it back, I think he definitely played his part by choosing to hang it around the outside when he had already been overtaken. And so that is why when you take all of that into account and remember that it was lap 1, I just don't agree that Ocon was predominantly to blame, and I think it's fine to call this an unfortunate racing incident where 2 drivers chose not to give way to each other. And now, I said before that there are 2 different angles to this, and even though in isolation I think Ocon has been unfairly maligned and unfairly penalised, when you actually step back and look at the bigger picture, he made a really selfish and really serious mistake. Something I didn't notice whilst watching the race live is that going up the hill he already tried a way too aggressive move on Gasly and made contact with him heading into Casino Square, and then more importantly, why would you try such an aggressive move on your teammate of all people when, as Gasly pointed out, they were both running in the points when they collided? If we just ignore the drivers for a second and focus on the team, they were running in P9 and P10 before they collided, around a track where it's almost impossible to overtake. And this is a team that scored just 1 point in the first 7 races. I know that in the end, when the race was restarted, that Sainz was reinstated into his 3rd place, which would have bumped Ocon out of 10th. But hypothetically, if the Alpine drivers had worked together and maintained their P9 and P10 positions, which isn't a crazy thing to assume around Monaco, they would have quadrupled their points tally in just 1 race. Given what we know now, Bruno Faman gave both drivers strict instructions that if either of them are next to each other on the track, then they have to work together and can't risk jeopardizing the team by needlessly attacking their teammate. Unfortunately, when Ocon saw his teammate in front of him his mindset right from the word go wasn't to work together and secure the positions that the team already had. He was more preoccupied with doing anything that he could to get ahead of his teammate, even if it meant going for super risky moves. And now, if this was for the win or for the World Championship, then I absolutely understand being selfish and putting your own interests ahead of the team's. But this is for P9. He needed to have more perspective on what's actually important, and he didn't need to send it down the inside of his teammate on lap 1. Because in the long run, it makes no difference to the team which driver finishes ahead of the other. After the incident, team principal Bruno Faman made his thoughts very clear, speaking to multiple reporters, and said, "Esteban's attack was completely out of line. It wasn't what we wanted to see. There will be consequences. We're going to have to make a tough decision." It was a clear instruction from the team on what to do, what we were supposed to do, and this wasn't respected. Potentially we could have maybe scored points with both cars. We'll talk about it, I'm sure we'll move on, and find solutions in the future. And now, Bruno Faman said that he thought Ocon was at fault during the race, and then soon after, when Ocon was asked about this by reporters, he basically shook his head in frustration and disagreement with his team principal, and straight up ignored the question and walked away from the reporter.
I heard that, I got the information that Bruno Famin had said that it was your fault.
I think that response tells you everything you need to know about what Esteban Ocon thought immediately out the car. Having then probably been screamed at by Bruno Faman in private, and probably realizing that his job is now seriously on the line, Ocon put out a statement on all of his social media platforms during the race, apologizing to the team for the incident. And now, to be honest, I'm not saying that there's no sincerity in that message whatsoever, but to me this was a very clear situation of damage control by Esteban Ocon, regardless if he actually believes in what he wrote or not. And now, after the race, everyone has been fixated on what Bruno Faman meant when he said that there will be consequences. Some have taken this to mean that the team could decide to bench Ocon for Canada as a form of punishment, which would be completely unheard of in Formula 1. And regardless of when Ocon will come back, he'll still have to serve his 5-place grid penalty, whether it's in Canada, Spain, or somewhere else. Were this to actually happen, the team's current reserve driver is Alpine Junior Jack Doohan, who recently tested the 2022 Alpine, or even potentially ex-F1 driver Mick Schumacher could also be an option, given that he's also part of the Alpine sports car team. Having said that, I would be shocked if the team are even seriously considering this, because whilst I get being angry with Ocon and being frustrated that he put his interests ahead of the team's, he's also been their best driver so far this season, which no one has really talked about, having outqualified Gasly 6-2 and then being 5-1 up in their race head-to-head when both have reached the checkered flag. Unless you're in the Williams position in Australia, where you literally have only one chassis, I just don't understand the benefit of benching your best driver as a form of punishment. These drivers are paid professionals, and part of the job for them, and also for the team principal, is to be able to sort out these kind of problems. Of course, the bigger problem is that this is now a very clear pattern of Esteban Ocon not being able to work together with numerous teammates, and it's something that I made a video about 2 years ago. So to say that any of this surprises me, it honestly doesn't. Esteban Ocon is a very good driver, don't let anyone tell you different. Right from the moment that he came into Formula 1, he was incredibly competitive up against a much more experienced Sergio Perez, and he even compared extremely well alongside Fernando Alonso, which isn't exactly something that you can say about a lot of Fernando's teammates. He is someone that you can trust to score points, he is undoubtedly a deserving Grand Prix winner, and he is also someone who, when the stars align, can also score podiums in a midfield car, as we saw in Monaco last year. The problem, as I've been saying for about 2 or 3 years now, is that because of the Alpine environment and because of how he lost his seat at the end of 2018, he drives with this sense of paranoia that at any moment he could be dropped, and that the only way that he can continue to justify his place within the team is by consistently beating his teammate. And now, on the surface, that's not a wrong mentality, that's just common sense. But when that manifests into toxicity with your teammate, which negatively affects you inside the team, and also starts to give you a reputation for being a bad teammate, that is when the whole beat my teammate at any cost mentality starts to become detrimental to you as a driver. Esteban Ocon has been at Alpine for 5 years, going back all the way to when the team was still called Renault. He has achieved a huge amount of success for this team, but I think we're all getting to the point where both parties are now ready for something new, and barring something remarkable like Gasly really underperforming to the point where the team literally can't afford to drop Ocon, I don't see him there in 2025, especially with the tension and toxicity with Pierre Gasly. Esteban knows this himself, and that is why rumours of him being linked to Audi and other teams have been so prominent over the past few months. Perhaps that is why he has been outperforming Gasly so far, and why he feels the need to be even more aggressive, because at the end of the day, he is quite literally driving for his future right now. But when you compare him to other free agents like Bottas, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, or even Gasly, who have never really had anywhere near the same level of problems with any of their past teammates as Ocon has had, that is where his reputation as a bad teammate is now going to start costing him his future, despite the talent and performances that he can deliver. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe, that would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.